you everyone for joining us today, talking about go-to-market reset, how we are seeing go-to-market, how it's changed in these times, and most importantly for the folks on the call, how you can be prepared for it for the coming year. I want to jump in to start looking at start with the data. Why don't we start with the data, Marta? And I think giving the background of the conclusions and our approaches is super important. So why don't I hand it over to you and tell us what has been changing in the B2B buyer area.
Thank you, Dana. And so, you absorb and think through so much research throughout the year, but there were two studies that really stood out to me. In that they enhanced my understanding of the buyer and changed my perspectives on how marketers need to approach the buyer group. And actually both pieces of these research, they come from the B2B Institute, which is a LinkedIn think tank. So I'm going to give you the very high level Coles notes because these studies are so rich and deep that we can't go through all of the details, but I'll share the things that really stood out to me. So we understand that B2B marketing is buyer group marketing. That's nothing new. But we do not have a sophisticated understanding of the behavioral dynamics in these buying groups. So this first piece of research sets out to study the social and emotional group-based decision-making dynamics of buyers in high consideration and high value tech purchases at large enterprises. So in a nutshell, high consideration B2B SaaS. So in the study, they took the traditional buyer group and they divided into two segments. The first one is the technical buyer. And in the study, they referred to the technical buyer as the target buyer because these are the buyers that are routinely targeted in our online marketing campaigns and they're visible on the advertising ecosystem. These are the people that at the end of the day are either they're using the product or the service that you're trying to sell. And the second group of buyers are referred to as the process buyers. Now, this is think procurement, legal, finance, operations, IT security, and sometimes even the C-suite. Now, what is distinct about this group is that they do not show up in the marketing engagement ecosystem. And the reason for that is because they're not interested in becoming product experts. They're not going to be using your product at the end of the day. So they don't download the white papers. They don't attend the webinars. And they are more or less invisible in terms of generating marketing intent signals, which is why in the studies, they're also called the hidden buyers.
Yeah, I love that. And for all of those folks in sales who are frustrated by what happened to that deal, like it's like we don't know what happened. And so so tell us a bit about what the study found about the behaviors of these groups.
Yeah, so Dana, you're hitting on something like right on the money there. So the thing that really struck me is that in the study, they discovered that the decision-making power is evenly split between the technical and process buyers. So basically 51% goes to technical and 49% to the process buyers. And how did the researchers discover this? Well, in the survey, they handed out these influence points. They had 100 influence points for everyone. And they asked them to share out between the functions who make the decision. And so that's how they came up with this 49, 51%. And the significance of this is huge because if you think about it, again, going back to those sales guys, if you're targeting the technical buyer, and that is where all of your marketing efforts are going, but this process buyer group has 49% of the decision-making power, then the question is, have you really addressed the entire buying group? Well, you haven't. You've addressed 50% of the buying group. And process buyers are 70% more likely to reject brands that are not well known to others on the buying group, and 31% more likely to reject brands that they themselves do not know. So to what you were saying, Dana, let's imagine a buying process. So the technical buyers are responsible for coming up with the vendor shortlist, and they pick the vendors that they think are going to solve their problem, and then they take that shortlist to the process buyers. And at that stage, the process buyers have 100% of the decision-making power. And this is exactly where those deals go cold. So in the research, they found that up to 50% of vendors get vetoed at this stage. So let's imagine we've got 8 vendors. That's a bit of a high number, but let's just, for argument's sake, say 8. And then 50% get vetoed. So now we're at 4. And the research also showed that up to 40 to 60% of deals get stalled right there at that stage because the buying group could not reach a consensus.
Yeah, and the thing that kills me about what you're talking about is sales productivity. So if your deals get lost late in the sales cycle, like you're talking about, when it's coming to the decision-making process, think about all of the wasted sales cycles on that deal that have been spent. And so when we're looking at, like, from IQ, from a data perspective, and we see we're constantly tracking sales velocity, and if we see that deals are dropping out of those conversion rates late in the sales cycle, are falling below benchmark or falling below target, we flag it, right? It's like something's going on, and it's not only killing the top line because you're not winning the deal, but it's also killing the bottom line because you're spending a lot on sales resources that are unproductive. So this is such a huge impact. So we're going to get to what to do, but let us, Marta, tell us a little bit about how do we understand these guys a little bit better.
Okay, so this group is all about reducing risk. They want a solution that is reliable, safe, and one that they can trust. And this is now we're going to dive into the second study, again, by the B2B Institute. It's called the Buyability Study. And the tagline for this study could be, behind every B2B purchase is a group of people trying not to make a mistake. And that's really how you need to think about your buyers. In a B2B context, the downside risk of making the wrong decision is so big that buyers want to choose something that is safe. Your job can literally be on the line if you make the wrong call. So what does safe mean? Safe means that it's a product or service that my peers, my boss, the rest of the buying group think is acceptable to buy. And given the risks inherent in buying decisions, the research tries to decode this question. What would have to be true for buyers to feel confident enough to buy? So what are the emotional factors that have to be true? So I'm going to run through them. So the product or service can do the job. So that's the basic one. You know, you're satisfying that technical buyer need. Yes, check. The buying process is relatively easy. The buying group is generally aligned. And so what that means, again, if the process buyers don't know the brand, then that is going to lead to misalignment in the buying group. The buyer feels like any downsides that come up can easily be managed. And then the most important one is the buyer feels that the decision they make can be defended if things go wrong. So what does that mean? It means that, okay, 2 years down the line, when your $2 million implementation of whatever system goes wrong, you can still stand in front of the board and defend your decision without getting fired. So let's go back to our hypothetical deal. We've got 4 vendors. So the process buyers have vetoed 4 of them. We've got 4 left. And now we're sitting with a handful of vendors who all meet the basic technical requirements. So what tips the balance? Who gets picked and why? And the answer, like really simply, the answer is relationships. Buyers are seeking certainty, so they try to buy certainty. Has the whole buyer group heard of the brand? Do other people like me think it is a good idea to buy from this company? So buyers want the right proof points. And the best way to do that is through their personal and professional networks. And another thing to consider is that there is a generational change happening in the B2B industry in terms of social generations. There are now a lot more millennials and Gen Z in the buying group, up to 71%. And they carry weight very differently in the buying process. They're much savvier in knowing, is this for real? Is this authentic? Or is this produced? And do I have social proof that people like me trust this? So in a nutshell, these studies reveal two powerful pieces of information in terms of the buying composition groups and the behavioral economics of those buying groups. So I'm going to hand it over back.
Thank you. So now we've got this problem which has been well elucidated, and now we're all struck with panic and fear. How are we actually influencing these guys? Wait a minute. So there's so much to unpack. So where do we go from here? And Juanita, I'm going to hand it over to you to say, okay, everybody, don't panic. There's something that we can do here. So tell us.